Welcome to Unbound, the podcast with Beth Curry, author, storyteller, and survivor. This is where books meet real life, where Beth reads chapters from her work and breaks free from the traditional audiobook format, diving deeper into the personal experiences, lessons, and liberation behind every page. Nothing is off limits. Let's get unbound.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Unbound. I'm Beth Curry, and today we are jumping right into chapter 1. Finally, right? Chapter 1 of all these beautiful things. If you listened to episode 1, you heard the dedication, the Dear Reader letter, and the foreword. You now kind of know why this book exists. My mom asked me to help tell her story before dementia took everything away, and now we're stepping into that story. It's not just a book about her memories, though. As you will see as we go on, the book kind of evolved and changed shape due to the progression of what she's going through. That's what life is when you're living with someone with dementia. It's very unpredictable. You cannot plan literally anything. You have to just play it by ear in the moment that you are living in. Chapter 1 is called Before. Before the diagnosis, before the memory loss, before everything changed. This chapter is kind of about capturing who my mom was and who she still is in so many ways before dementia kind of took over and started rewriting this stuff. So I guess I'll just begin. Before. Over 40 years ago, my mother wrote a poem to my grade 3 teacher. We love you, Mrs. B. To Mrs. B of dimpled cheeks, who's tired from packing weeks and weeks, who keeps small faces all aglow, who helps them learn math facts to know, who with her smiling happy face and laughing eyes and clippy pace inspires all who know her. Yes, Dave and Kathy must confess, we love our children more and more, we hug them as we shut the door, we write small notes and give more praise, we answer yeses instead of nays. We thank our lucky stars above, and we think Mrs. B means love. Over 40 years later, Mrs. B, now Mrs. C, still has this note. That's the thing about Mom. Her words stuck with people, wrapped around their hearts, and stayed there. She had this ability to capture exactly what needed to be said, to turn ordinary moments into something memorable with her spontaneous poetry and genuine care. Now sitting across from her at Willow Grove on a bright October morning in 2024, coffee growing cold in paper cups, I'm telling her about my upcoming book release when she interrupts me. I need help telling my story, she says, before I lose everything. Looking at her now, I think about all the stories that led us here, all the moments we thought would stay forever. My earliest memories of Mom blur between what I actually remember and what she loved to retell, like watercolors bleeding into each other. The city bus rides through Stony Creek stand out, Mom holding my hand as we swayed with each stop and turn. Usually we were headed to the doctor's office, a journey that felt like an adventure when I was small enough for my feet to dangle from the bus seats. Then there was the incident with the pills, one of those stories Mom would share with such delight because it became part of our family lore. I have only the vaguest recollection of the actual event, but I can see it through her telling. Me, ever curious, discovering a bottle of colorful vitamins and deciding my nose would make an excellent storage container. Mom would laugh, describing how my face became a running rainbow as they dissolved, though I'm sure she was far less amused in the moment. Looking back now, I notice how this story began to shift in her later tellings. Sometimes it was Jennifer, sometimes it didn't happen at all. But I remember the burning sensation. Some things your body doesn't let you forget. Speaking of Jennifer, my arrival into the world was not exactly celebrated by all parties. While Mom and Dad were presumably thrilled with their new addition, my big sister had some rather strong opinions about this interloper in her kingdom. Mom would love telling these stories with a mix of horror and humor, the way you can only laugh about such things decades later. The high chair incident, where Jennifer decided to adjust my altitude. The mug trajectory calculation, where she tested the impact resistance of my skull using the nearest available ceramic vessel. And the pinching. Oh, the pinching. Jennifer maintained long, perfectly manicured nails while I was a chronic nail biter, creating an unfortunate imbalance in our sibling warfare. Mom's conflict resolution strategy was unique. "Take it outside" became her battle cry, delivered with the exasperated tone of someone who had simply run out of diplomatic solutions. Jennifer and I would be unceremoniously shooed out the door like squabbling cats, Mum's wooden clog flip-flops clicking decisively as she closed the door behind us. She'd look up from whatever she was doing when we returned, assess that no one needed stitches, and nod with satisfaction. Problem solved. Everything changed when we moved to Coldstream Drive in Burlington. Our semi-detached house came with an unexpected bonus: built-in best friends. The Collings shared our wall and soon shared our lives in ways that went far beyond property lines. Kelly became my lifelong best friend, and between her sister Rebecca, Jennifer, and our rotating cast of neighborhood kids, we created the kind of childhood that feels like it could have only existed in the 1980s. Because it did. Back then, Mum worked at Faro in Oakville before returning to teaching. The Mum swap system worked brilliantly. Mrs. calling at home while Mum was at work, all of us kids flowing between houses like we owned them both. Kelly and I would make up elaborate songs and scheme ways to earn sleepovers, often promising to scrub the entire kitchen in exchange. One stands out in my mind as fresh as the day we made it up. Using the jingle from a Cashway commercial, Kelly and I sang, "Yes, you can depend on us, Cathay, depend on us, Cathay." Mum would pretend to consider these offers seriously, though looking back, I suspect she would have said yes anyway. She just enjoyed watching us work for it. Our days were filled with bike rides and block parties, summer camps, and VBS at the church just up the street. The Collings would host corn roasts in the late summer and early fall, our dads sharing beers while the kids ran wild in the gathering dusk. The neighborhood hummed with a kind of community you rarely find anymore, where doors were always open and every parent looked out for every child. Mum navigated this busy life with what seemed like effortless grace, though now I wonder if we missed the early signs of what was to come. When she'd tell the same story twice in one afternoon, we'd just laugh it off as Mum being scattered, too busy juggling everyone else's needs to keep track of her own conversational threads. Her occasional forgetfulness or confusion seemed charming then, just Mum being flighty, lost in her own world of helping others. Dad's shift work at Ford created its own rhythm in our house. During his night shifts, Mum would treat us to secret McDonald's runs funded by the Green Machine ATM and her baby bonus. "Don't tell your father," she'd stage whisper, though I suspect he knew. When he worked nights, Jennifer got to stay up late with Mum, while I lay in bed, seething with that particular injustice that only a younger sibling can feel. But then Dad would make up for it by scooping me from bed in the early morning darkness to spend that precious hour with Mum before she had to start her day. Our house became a hub of activity, Mum's presence at its heart. The kettle was always on, ready for impromptu tea visits. She'd wear her "Nobody knows the trouble I've been" t-shirt like a badge of humor, those wooden flip-flops announcing her movements through the house. Her wedding dress stayed carefully preserved in the bottom drawer where Jennifer and I would find it, trying it on time after time, imagining our own futures while wrapped in her past. Evenings in our house had their own rhythm. After dinner, while Jennifer and I bickered over dishes, Mum might set up the backgammon board, those familiar clicks of pieces being placed, making a percussion beat to her humming. She was fiercely competitive, but always made losing feel like almost as much fun as winning. Almost. Milbourne was another favorite, along with the usual classics, Crazy Eights or Go Fish. The Atari would come alive too. Mum wasn't just a spectator in our games. She'd grab a joystick and join right in, her laugh ringing out when she'd triumph in Pac-Man or Breakout. Then, Tuesday nights were sacred. Moonlighting owned the TV slot, and Mum would settle in with a cup of tea to watch Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd's banter, completely invested in every episode. Music filled our home too. When I'd practice Moonlight Sonata, Mum would stop whatever she was doing, just lean in the doorway, eyes closed, letting the notes wash over her. "Play it again," she'd say, and I always would. She had this way of making you feel like whatever you were doing was the most important thing in the world at that moment. In the early 90s, Mum returned to teaching, taking a position teaching French at Park Academy. It was like watching someone step back into their natural habitat. She'd always been a teacher at heart, whether she was showing us how to fold fitted sheets or helping neighborhood kids work through their troubles. But it was her move to Brant Bible Church, later Compass Point, that really showed us who she was meant to be. 7 days a week, she poured herself into that community. Sundays found her singing in the choir, her voice carrying the harmony and hymns, while Jennifer and I watched from the pews. She'd work in the nursery, teach Sunday school, coordinate events, and somehow still be available for anyone who needed counsel or comfort. The church wasn't just her workplace, it was her mission field. Between work and church commitments, Mom's days were packed with serving others. She was there for every wedding, every funeral, every crisis and celebration. She could organize a funeral, counsel a troubled teen, and write a perfect poem for a special occasion all in the same afternoon. Looking back, I wonder if this constant giving, this never-ending attention to others' needs, might have masked how her own mind was beginning to play tricks on her. When she'd mix up dates or repeat herself, we'd attribute it to her busy schedule, her mind always running in multiple directions. Behind her happy, busy life ran a deeper current of love and complexity. Mom and Dad showed us what marriage could be. Not perfect, but perfectly dedicated. Commitment you see through, Mom would say, as long as things are always safe. She lived these words not just in her marriage to Dad, but in how she handled the delicate reality of his past. Before Jennifer and I came along, there were other children in their story. Dad's sons from his first marriage. Mom would tell us, with a tenderness that spoke volumes, about those early days when the boys would visit. They were just little then, and she opened her heart to them completely. As time passed, those visits became fewer, and the boys became more like distant stars in our family constellation. Present, but somehow just out of reach. To Jennifer and me, they were these mythical big brothers we knew existed, but rarely saw. Mom, like Dad, handled our questions with characteristic wisdom, never diminishing their importance, but never burdening us with adult complexities we weren't ready to understand. Life has a way of coming full circle. Those brothers we wondered about grew up in a loving home with wonderful parents and siblings of their own. When our paths finally converged again as adults, their families welcomed us with open arms, with a grace that showed me that even apart, they were raised by good parents, just as my sister and I were. Even now, Mom lights up when we talk about this reunion of siblings. Sometimes she mixes up the timeline, but she never confuses the importance of it. Family finds its way, she'll say, and she was right. Her work at Compass Point continued until the spring of 2017, years filled with ministry, purpose, and endless giving. But retirement, selling childhood home after 40 years, and the move to a new town marked a more significant change than any of us expected. Away from the familiar church hallways, away from her lifetime of community connections, the first hints of decline began to surface. The woman who had served others for over 40 years found herself untethered from the community that had been her lifeblood. The subtle shifts became harder to dismiss. The vitamin incident story, once so clear in her telling, began to change. Sometimes it was me, sometimes Jennifer. Her spontaneous poetry, once razor-sharp and timely, became more elusive. The complex family dynamics she had navigated so gracefully for decades began to confuse her. And more recently, "I don't have Dave anymore?" became a frequent question, each time asked as if brand new. Yet even as certain memories began to slip away, others remained. She could still hum every note of Moonlight Sonata, sing along with the Sparklettes when they performed wartime hits at her long-term care facility. She still remembered exactly how her wedding dress felt, stored in that bottom drawer where Jennifer and I would find it, still lit up at the mention of her grandchildren, even if the details sometimes got fuzzy around the edges. Now, sitting across from her at Willow Grove, on a bright October morning, I understand why she interrupted my book news with her request. "I need help telling my story," she said, "before I lose everything." My sweet mom now needs help preserving the very memories she helped create. I realize with a sting in my heart, even when she can't remember all the verses to Que Sera, Sera, even when she confuses which games we played or which friends came for tea, the love remains. Whatever will be, but what was, what Mom built, what she gave, who she was and is, that's what I need to capture now, before the memories fade, like the last notes of a familiar song. The birds are here, I think they sing, a fluttering blur on a feathered wing. Their voices rise, a gentle choir, igniting sparks of something prior. Kathy Downey. Impromptu poem transcribed from a voice recording, January 13th, 2025. This beautiful piece emerged over 10 minutes of fragmented conversation. Okay, let me talk about what it was like to write this chapter and what's happened since. The hardest part of writing this chapter was trying to remember more of my own early memories. I guess as children, we just don't really retain much. I'd sit there racking my brain, what do I actually remember versus what I've been told, right? The city bus rides, the vitamin incident, some of those moments on Coldstream Drive. How much is mine and how much is just, mom's storytelling? This becomes so embedded it feels like memory. I've always kind of wondered this. Like sometimes when I have memories of things, I'm like, am I remembering that exactly as it happened or what? Memory's a weird thing. Anyway, it's frustrating when you're trying to preserve someone else's history and you realize that your own archive is, kind of incomplete. Something that really messed with me while writing this, Mom's version of stories, started changing, as I had said before. And it had me kind of second guessing my own memories. Like, again, with the vitamin incident, she'd say that it was me and sometimes Jennifer and sometimes it didn't happen at all. And I'd think, wait, I actually remember that feeling, but I can also see it as if I was looking at myself. So then I think, was it me or was it my sister? And then I'd wonder, am I just convinced it was me because she told the story that way for 40 years? Memories are funny that way, aren't they? Like I don't know, two people involved in the same event can remember it so differently or not even at all. So then you kind of start to wonder what are memories anyway, especially when you're second guessing yourself. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I just kept writing, being clear that, somewhere in all the different versions was what really happened, likely where they overlapped, but it's kind of unsettling when the person who gave you your own story can no longer confirm it. So it's, it's kind of a weird thing. I also had a question someone asked me after episode 1 if I still wonder whether we missed the early signs or if I'm just kind of reinterpreting normal forgetfulness. So months after writing that chapter, I can say with certainty we absolutely missed early signs. Like, there's no question. And, kind of as I get further into the book, you'll kind of hear my thoughts and feelings about that as they emerge. But you really do just think, it's someone's personality. Mom's scattered or mom's kind of flighty, as I said, or mom's always been like that. And honestly, it can be, pretty dangerous to look at everything as a diagnosis of something bad, right? Because you don't want to in the time. You don't want to think, oh, gee, I wonder. Like, because even me, I'm pretty flighty sometimes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, am I getting dementia? Like, that's just such a horrible way to live life. Like, it's just, you could drive yourself like batshit crazy, just, worrying and thinking about it that way. So it seems, better, almost safer to just kind of write things off as quirks, right? Until you can't anymore. Anyway, I don't beat myself up about missing those signs because, like, what would we have done differently anyway? Just, like, worried sooner? So we would have worried for longer? Like, no, that doesn't change the outcome, right? But yeah, the signs were definitely there. We just, we weren't looking for them. I wouldn't even say we were in denial. We just weren't looking for them. So the poem at the end of the chapter, The Birds Are Here, I think they sing, that came, Mom and I were having some pretty broken conversation, and I was thinking, I think it's time for me to wrap this up and go, but, something just kept me there and kept me kind of recording, and then, just all of a sudden, completely spontaneously, she started. I think actually, you know what, I just remembered I had turned off the recorder, and she had started to get, like, I could see something. She was looking out the window, and I could see something kind of churning in her brain. So I thought, maybe I better put this on because I think she's about to tell me a story, another story, like from her childhood or whatever. So I actually hit the record button again because I knew I needed whatever was about to happen. I knew I needed to capture it for sure. Anyway, then she started. She said a line, and then she would pause, and her eyes would kind of look around, and then another line would come. And I remember after about like I'm pretty sure it was like the second or third line, and she said the line, and then she just broke up into this huge grin. It was like so adorable. But she'd pause and she'd kind of look around, almost like she was trying to think. And, it wasn't the sharp, immediate poetry that she used to create, the kind that kind of came out fully formed, like that poem to Mrs. C. It was slower, for sure. It was harder won, and it was pulled from somewhere deep, for sure. Somewhere that's just getting harder for her to access. But in that moment, it felt like she was the mom she always used to be. That the gift was still there. It was just kind of filtered through a fogginess now. Having read this chapter aloud today, this isn't the first time I've read it out loud. As I had said in possibly episode 0, we got about 12, 13, 14 chapters into recording the audiobook. So I've actually, read these things out loud. But worth sharing, when I was writing, I was in researcher mode, right? I was gathering memories. I was kind of organizing them and trying to build a complete picture. But reading it now, I can hear, love and grief. The before feels kind of final somehow when you speak it out loud. Before, I don't know. One line that kind of caught in my throat both times that I've read this now, whatever will be, but what was, what mom built, what she gave, who she was and is, that's what I need to capture now before the memories fade, like the last notes of a familiar song. Because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm capturing the last notes. That kind of sucks. I don't know. I guess I didn't really feel the weight of that when I was writing it. I guess if I could change anything, maybe I'd add more about the ordinary days, right? The ones that weren't stories. They were just kind of life, like mom making breakfast and folding laundry and mom humming while she cleaned. Those moments don't really make good anecdotes, but they were the substance of who she was, and they're gone now, unrecorded. Anyway, I have had a few questions that came in after episode 1. Please keep sending these. All the contact stuff is in the show notes. So first question from Linda. I think this was the same Linda I've already mentioned. Linda says, Beth, how does your sister Jennifer feel about you telling these family stories? Does she remember things differently than you do? Wow. I think that's such an important question. Jen and I definitely remember some things differently. She's older, so her early memories are clearer in some ways and hazier in others. We've had some interesting conversations while I was kind of going through the process of writing this. She has been supportive of the book. She's always been supportive of me. I think I'm very lucky to have a big sister who, supports me in all the good things I do. And, she loves me through the kind of shittier things that I do. But, sometimes she'll say, oh, I don't remember it that way, or that's not how it felt to me, or whatever. That's valid. It's kind of like what I said, our memories are weird, especially when there's a shared memory, but there's different interpretations of it. This is my version of our family story told through my lens. Jennifer could write a completely different book about the same childhood, right? And it would be just as true and just as valid. I think she appreciates that I kind of preserve some of Mom's story, even though, some of the details might be a little bit different in her telling. So, she's been supportive. I don't think she's minded. I got a question here from Marcus. You mentioned your mom worked 7 days a week at the church. Do you think she was running from something or running towards something? Interesting. And do you ever resent how much time that took away from your family? Marcus, wow. That's a harder question than you might realize. I think Mom was running towards something, honestly. Purpose, meaning, the joy of serving. Like, she loved serving people, If she still could do it, she would, absolutely. But was she also running from something? Maybe. Maybe the busyness, kept her from having to look too closely at herself. It was starting to change in her mind. But I don't know, because I don't know if she actually knew back then, if anything was going on. And as for whether or not I resent it, sometimes, I guess. I mean, I won't lie. There were moments growing up when I, wanted her to just be my mom, not everyone's counselor or organizer or problem solver. But now watching her in long-term care, I'm glad she had those years of kind of pouring herself into something she loved. She built a legacy beyond our family. People still talk about what she meant to them. And that really means a lot to me, you know. So no, I guess I don't resent it, but I understand the cost now in ways that, you know, I didn't then, I guess. Another question here from Jess. When you visit your mom now, does she ever surprise you with a memory that's crystal clear? What's that like? Jess, yes. All the time. It's like the fog kind of parts for a moment and she's completely herself again. It's really wild. And believe me, I love these moments. And I love it when it's like an entire visit where she's just like kicking back, relaxed, and it's just like she was like 5-10 years ago. She will remember like some tiny detail from like 40 years ago with perfect clarity. Or she'll say something so quintessentially her that I forget for a second that like anything is wrong, right? Yeah, these moments are absolute gifts. They are also cruel, if I can say that, because they kind of remind you of what you're losing, you know? You get the glimpse of who she was, and then that dreaded dark gray, dank, shitty fog just rolls right back in. But I will take those moments. Absolutely. Every single one of them. So anyway, I guess that's it. So next episode, I'm going to move into the Monday visits, the real-time documentation, you know, of mom's dementia. You know, that's where you're going to see where the memory shifts happen and the questions start to repeat and the stories change. It might be harder to listen to, but that's the heart of this book. You know, it is what it is. If this first chapter 1, resonated with you, if you've lived with this before with your own parent or a loved one, I'd love to hear from you. Again, send your questions. You know, I think all the info is going to be in the show notes. And if you want to support the show with a coffee or 2 coffees, a shot of whiskey, cat treats, whatever, you can do that at my coffee spot. Link is in the show notes as well. But honestly, just you being here and listening is support enough. Again, I cannot state that enough. So it's entirely up to you. This will always be free to listen to. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next episode. Have a good one, guys.
Thanks for listening to Unbound with Beth Curry. Join the conversation in the Facebook group or visit authorbethcurry.com. Want to support the show? Head to ko-fi.com/unbound podcast. Until next time, stay unbound.